Hi, my name is Casey Griffiths, and I'm part of the committee putting together the 50th anniversary conference for the John Whitmer Historical Association. We'd like to invite you to celebrate with us this 50th anniversary conference on September 15th through 18th, 2022. The conference will be held in Independence, Missouri, in the Community of Christ Temple. Our Richard P. Howard lecturer will be Amy DeRogatis, and our keynote speaker will be Spencer McBride, who's going to talk about Joseph Smith's presidential campaign. The presidential address and the banquet will be held at the Uptown Market in Independence. Now, there's going to be a number of other special events that happen too. We'll have our regular award ceremony for the best books and best articles. We'll have a 50th anniversary bus tour that focuses on John Whitmer, his history, and some of the sites linked to his history. And we hope that we can see all of you at our 50th anniversary celebration honoring a half century of promoting the study of the history of the Restoration. See you there.
Good evening and welcome to the John Whitmer Business Meeting. Welcome to our historic two-day conference. We are thrilled to have you here. I'm Jill Brim, President of the John Whitmer Historical Association. I would like to call the meeting to order. You have all received a link inviting you to attend this business meeting, along with the ability to download the business meeting handouts. We will begin by reviewing and approving the business meetings for September 19th, business meeting minutes for September 19th, 2020. Do we have a motion from the floor to approve the minutes? If you will please place this in the chat.
Jill, we have a motion from Jason Smith to move and Dan Whitmore as well to move the minute.
Thank you. Do we have a second? If you will place that in the chat as well.
And Dan has seconded.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that we approve the September 19th, 2020 business meeting minutes. Any discussion, if you would like to place this in the chat? Seeing no discussion, we will proceed to the vote. If you will cast your vote, please look at the polling sheet that is in the center of your screen now. Thank you for your participation. We will close the vote. And the minutes have been approved. Thank you. At this time, we'll continue with the 2020 financial report from Dan Whitmore, our finance chair. Dan?
Well, good evening, all you historians. This is the opportunity when historians can take a few moments and be financial experts. We have a new format for our financial report this year, which we think we will have it on an ongoing basis. It's a formal annual statement format. The format's a little different. We're presenting only 3 pages to you tonight in this presentation, but the report itself has about 5 pages of footnotes. You can look at the entire annual financial report for the last calendar year on the John Whitmer webpage or in the last newsletter. And be sure to read the footnotes. I'll refer to several of them tonight, but you might find some others very, very interesting. Next slide. The first statement is the balance sheet. We used to call it the balance sheet. It is now customarily called Statement of Financial Position. It includes assets, liabilities, and our fund balance. First, the really good news, since we're on the cash basis of reporting, we don't have any liabilities. Cheryl holds the books open for a little time in January, so we get the December bills in. So essentially on this page, we have assets and our equity, which is called net assets in this governmental format. The format's a little bit differently. Hopefully it will describe a little easier for the reader the operating nature of the organization and the other type of financial activities we have. Thus, we have 3 columns and a total column for the 4th column. The operating column is in the unrestricted column, where we reflect the income and expenses of the organization. The middle 2 columns reflect the restricted accounts, and these are all invested in stocks and bonds and money market accounts. And depending on who and how the money goes in here is how it's restricted. Where we have temporarily restricted, these are the funds that are determined by our board, our governing board, of which Jill is the chair. She's a historian, but holds a lot of financial power. The 3rd column is permanently restricted, and it's so restricted because of the nature in which some donors make their contributions. You'll see in that column, it totals $155,000. The board about 5-7 years ago was trying to determine from the donors which accounts were in a permanent restricted nature. And at that time, they came up with a very researched estimate of $100,000. There's one donor that put in $10,000. And so those 2 amounts were restricted. Well, the good news is it doesn't show 110,000 in that column, it's 155,000. That's because this portion of the endowment has grown. So in summary, on the 2 endowment columns, the temporary restricted is determined by the governing board, and the John Whitmer board has made a determination to restrict those funds, and they can do whatever is legally appropriate within their powers. The other column on the permanently restricted is determined by the donors. And I'll review some of that again in a moment. So on balance on this page, we show only money in bank accounts and investment portfolios. On the first column is a checking account that our Chief Executive Officer, Cheryl, uses. And she receives money into that checking account and writes checks. And she has some money available that she doesn't need immediately, so she puts that in a money market account. We get some interest, very little interest. It's roughly about 1%. Sometimes it squeezes up into the 2 category, but it's not a great deal. Then looking down a little further, we have cash investment reserve of $28,000. That amount is also a money market. It's held by our financial managers in St. Paul, Minnesota. And this is a money market that we're going to need for our 50th anniversary celebration and determination of how specific donations have been made. So since we're needing that within a short range, within a year, we don't want to take market risk in stocks and bonds. The following 2 lines are investment funds. The first line is board designated, $428,000. And that has grown through the years. It's come in essentially by 2 reasons. One reason has to do with during any calendar year, we have more income than expenses, and the excess goes into that account as an equity into the organization. The second primary way is if a donor contributes some money for operations, and if it's not entirely used in that 1 year in which it's given, then it goes into this temporary restricted equity account. And that has grown to 428,000 over the years. Sounds like a lot of money, but I'll indicate how the board intends to use this so you don't think we're sitting on a pile of gold that is not being used. It is being used. The other category of the permanently restricted is a donor designated amount of 155,000. In this case, the board can use all of the earnings or however the donor has designated, but cannot go below that $110,000 of which I referenced earlier. The organization is legally required to keep that as a corpus, and only the earnings can be used in that permanently restricted. So this is a bird's eye view of the money that we have on hand, and it is our total balance sheet, and whatever represents as total assets totaling $633,000 is also our equity of the organization. Here it's called total liabilities and net assets. We'll have an opportunity for questions in a few moments. Before we leave the investment side, I'd like to comment how the board intends to use the two middle columns, $457,000 and $155,000. These are numbers at the end of last year. Because of market increases, they're about $70,000 higher as of today. The board intends to use some of those earnings for operational purposes if we need them. About, 6-7 years ago, maybe longer, it's however long Cheryl was here, the organization took a huge risk on hiring staff to be the chief executive officer. We were concerned at that time if our meager management membership fees would cover the cost, but we've had particularly one outstanding contributor that has really assisted us in recent years. And so the risks that we felt we were sharing when our executive director came aboard, we now have a method to help finance that. And that method is for the balance of the investment funds, we can take as a spending rate, we plan to use about 4.5%. Actually, the board resolution permits the board to go up to 5%, but most organizations like ours and colleges and universities are using a spending rate of 4 to 4.5%. Currently, we're talking about 4.5%, and we're authorized to go to 5%. That means this investment portfolio will continue to grow every year, or we may suffer some losses and are likely to suffer losses in some years. But on balance, we believe that we can live within that. We've developed an investment policy that we give our manager, that he manages our funds in stocks and bonds in an area with some growth so that we can realize 3 to 5% above inflation. And we've been able to do that in recent years. Since we had our investment portfolio, we have averaged 5.5% yield since the inception. If we have a 4.5 or 5% spending rate, then we're well within this management concept that the board is working on. And the difference between our spending rate and if the investment portfolio is higher, that balance just increases the investment portfolio. I hope that's not too confusing. From my point of view as chair of the Finance Committee, I think it is a very financially responsible position for the board to be in. And we want to give a lot of gratitude to the contributor that assisted us in developing some of this financial security. You will hear more from us as members of the organization in the future in regard to two areas. One is membership fees. That's on our agenda later this evening. The other is we would like some of you to think about contributions above the membership fees. And several in our organization have been doing that, and we would like to make that even more widely known. Next slide, please. The second statement is a statement of activities that reflects our revenues compared to expenses. And we have the same four-column format here. The first column is unrestricted, and think of that as our operating account. And then the next two columns, the temporary restricted, is as I've described them on the asset. It's the money held in our investment portfolio. The second column is determined by, the use is determined by the board. And the third column, the use is determined by specific contributors, and then we have the total. You'll see the total revenues in that first column total $71,000. Following down in that first column, expenses are almost $75,000 for the year. This is for the last calendar year, January through December 2020. So on an operating basis, we actually showed a net loss of $3,886. We had that safety net within the budget to draw from the restricted funds according to the policy that I previously indicated. So even though we had a net loss here of the year, operating loss of $3,886, that was covered within the financial structure of the organization. So the beginning balance is $24,000 in our operating, and we had our net loss of almost $4,000 to take the end of the year balance of $20,721. The two middle columns show what happens in those restricted investment accounts. And there were some contributions that went in, $11,500 transfer to the operating fund. And then we're showing investment gains and losses and interest earned. And you'll see that that's noted on that sheet as well. In the total column, we've recognized total income of $131,243. Expenses of $79,354, leaving us a net gain for the year of $51,889. And we were able to do this because on the first line shows contributions. Those are amount that represents the amount of money that has come into the organization over and above membership dues. And that has really carried the organization for the year 2020, and as it has in previous years. I'd like to highlight that. The about the fourth line on revenues is membership dues, $6,845. That represents about 23% of the total operating cost of the organization. So you see that we're really reaching beyond membership dues. We do have a proposal in a few more minutes to increase that membership amount, and it will increase it a couple $1,000s. And you may have questions on this this sheet. Our total revenues in the first column, $71,000, expenses $74,000. We had a net loss of $3,886 on our operating purposes. But then when you bring in all the investment activity, then that's where we've shown the big gain. We've had a very good gain in our investment portfolio. Next slide. Now, this is a detail of our operating costs totaling $79,354. Our largest expenditure represents the risks that we took, I don't know, 7 to 10 years ago by hiring an executive director. That cost is $36,000 to us. It has been very well worth the funds. Our organization is very well managed with Cheryl. I was going to say at the helm, but Jill is really at the helm. But with the direction that Jill gives Cheryl, we're doing a great job. That's most of the expenses. There's other operating expenses, journal. The cost to put out the journal is about $11,000. There's some money that we put out on the cash basis for future conferences, and you can see that detail there. And this is a total of $79,354 that was also represented on the previous page. The next page, next slide. Well, the next slide, I guess, is me talking a little bit more. I'm going to talk about the investment portfolio for a moment, because that's really bringing in bread and butter to our organization. Our investments for last calendar year brought in 4.85% rate of return. That is above the inflation rate, and we're very pleased with that format. From the beginning of time, from 2012, when we used our particular investment manager, we have yielded at an average of 5.5% per year. And this year to date for 9 months on the aggregate, we're 7.4% up. So our investments have done really well for our organization, and the way we have the financial base structured by using those restricted assets and using the income off them to carry the continuity of the organization, I believe will keep our organization in very good structure. And should you have a question or two on this, you can raise them now. I'd like to reference some footnotes. When you pull up the annual financial statement, you'll see we have a footnote on the 50th anniversary coming up on September 18th, 2022. We hope all of you, plus 3 times this number, will be in Independence as we celebrate. We have raised some extra money and are asking for more contributions for our 50th anniversary celebration. At this time, I'd be glad.
And there is a
to-
question in the chat from
Please.
Michael Riggs. The delta on the JWHA books account is twice as much as expense to revenue. Is there a plan to increase sales of books?
Yes, there is. The book sales is a very good report. I'm not sure I'm the best one to answer that, but in listening in the board report on the books that are in process of being approved by our printing arm, and we will make some money on those books. There are several in the pipeline. And I'd like to open it to see if somebody else would like to address that question. It's a good question, and it's a very positive point of view for our organization. Is there somebody else that could help address the activity and the books in process?
Yes, we have Mark Staker and Don Ender's new book on the archaeology that has taken place at Tunbridge. That's a new release. We're very excited about that. And as you mentioned as well, Dan, we do have other books in the pipeline as well under our books manager, Chris Smith.
Thank you, Jill. Are there any other questions?
And from Charlie Robinson, it says, without the 17,250 transfer, net assets would have been positive rather than negative 3886. Why the transfer?
Let's see. The transfer on that, as I recall, was that we didn't need all of the contributions that came in this fiscal year to fund our expenses. So we transferred 17,000 out to be temporarily restricted and put it in the investment portfolio. And since we're on the cash basis of accounting, that's how it showed up on this from one column to the other. You see that it's taken out of the unrestricted column, which is our operating column, and it is increased in the temporarily restricted, which is our investment portfolio.
Going back to the question about the books, Lachlan Mackay says, Community of Christ Historic Sites are likely the biggest JW Books customer, and we have been closed since March 2020.
And we're going to open again. And that's where the good news comes in. Thank you, Locke.
And then Charlie added, but you could have transferred less and not had a negative balance, just wonder.
That's one reason why you read the total in the total column, why you read the whole organization. While it does show it under the loss under unrestricted, it's a plus in the other column. So it really nets out. That's a good point, but it has to do with the cash transfer that went out of that one account to the other. Are there any other questions or comments? You can also have comments. I know you're going to have some comments when we bring up membership increases.
Well, thank you, Dan. Seeing no further questions, then we will move on to the approval then of the financial report. Do we have a motion from the floor then to accept the financial report?
There's a motion from Kristen Mackay to move.
Thank you, Kristen. Is there a second?
Rachel seconds, as well as Kim Staker.
Thank you, Rachel and Kim. It has now been moved and seconded that we approve the 2020 financial report as given by Dan Whitmore. Is there any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion then from the floor, we will move to the vote. At this time, if you would cast your vote. And we are waiting now for the ballot. This will be coming up in the center of your screen.
My apologies, it is failing to launch.
Barb, we could just have people raise their hands and then I could lower all of them after a count is taken.
Sure, yeah.
And hands are going up, so please raise your hands if you're in favor. We have 31 attendees and 25 hands up so far.
Thank you. We'll just wait a few more seconds.
$27 hands up.
Thank you, Seth. At this time, we will close the vote. And it appears that the 2020 financial report has been accepted. Thank you. We will now move on to the report of the Nominations Committee. Rachel Killebrew, Chair, Joe Geisner, David Howlett, Lachlan Mackay, and Aaron Metcalf present the following slate. As president-elect for 2022, Casey Griffiths. To complete Casey's vacated term from 2021 to 2023, Megan Stanton. As our 2022 Board of Directors nominees, Mark Staker and Susan Staker. The JWHA bylaws indicate that we can take nominations from the floor. If you have a nomination for a board position, would you please place it now in the chat? Seeing
I am
no
not seeing.
nomination, excuse me, Seth?
I was just going to say, I'm not seeing anything in chat.
Okay, thank you very much. Seeing no nominees, then nominations in the chat, we will proceed now with the vote. The nominations are closed. Our slate then, Casey Griffith, the president-elect, Megan Stanton, completing Casey's vacated term, Mark Staker, Board of Director nominee, and Susan Staker, Board of Director nominee. Do we have a motion from the floor to accept the slate?
Myra Elliott moves.
Thank you, Myra. Do we have a second?
Rachel seconds.
Rachel, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that we accept the 2022 slate of nominees. We will begin with the president-elect Casey. Do we have any discussion? Seeing no discussion, we'll proceed then to the vote. If you will please cast your vote for our president-elect.
We are having the same problem as the last vote. So I would suggest that we continue with raising your hands. And if you approve the president-elect to go ahead and raise your hands, Seth will count those raised hands and we can move forward. My apology for the technological difficulties.
Thank you, Barbara.
We have 24 hands up out of 30.
Thank you, Seth. We will close the vote. And Casey Griffith has been elected president-elect. Next, to complete Casey's vacated term, Megan Stanton. Do we have any discussion? If you would place it in the chat at this time. Seeing no discussion, we'll proceed to the vote. If you will please cast your vote. Seth then will repeat the process then of having participants raise their hand.
And I see 25 out of 30 hands up.
Thank you very much. Megan then has been elected to complete Casey's vacated term. Next, Board of Director nominee Mark Staker. Any discussion? Please place it in the chat at this time. Seeing no discussion, we will proceed to the vote. Continuing the pattern now, if you will please raise your hand.
There are 24 out of 30 hands up.
Thank you, Seth. Mark has been elected to the Board of Directors. We will now proceed to Susan Staker's nomination for the Board of Directors. Any discussion, please place it into the chat. Seeing no discussion, we'll proceed then to the vote. Would you please cast your vote by raising your hand?
And there are 23 out of 30 hands up.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Seth. Susan has been elected to the Board of Directors beginning in 2022. We would like to congratulate all of our new board members and welcome them. Next, we are going to arrange for the nominating committee. Nominate, please, only members you have confirmed will accept the nomination. We will accept the first 4 names submitted as committee members and the second 2 as alternates in the event a committee member cannot serve. So we will take the first 4 names then for the nominating committee. The following 2 then would be alternates. If you could place these names now in the chat. So if you can think of individuals then who could present names for individuals who can serve on our board, we'd be very grateful.
Kyle Walker's name by Gene Adams, and then a question by Rachel, or a statement that you are allowed to nominate yourself.
Thank you, Rachel. That's exactly right.
And Michael Riggs has nominated Jason Smith.
Excellent. So how many names do we have now, Seth?
2,
2.
Kyle Walker and Jason Smith.
Any other individuals that you would like to nominate who could provide suggestions
nomination
for our board?
For Catherine Pollock.
Thank you. And do we have one more name that you might think of, an individual who could serve on the nominating committee, giving us new ideas about people who can serve on the board and continue our great association? Again, you can nominate yourself, as Rachel Killebrew mentioned. Now, perhaps some of you are hesitant because it does say nominate only members you have confirmed will accept the nomination. But if you can think of an individual who you think would serve the association well and nominate them, we'll be confirming with them as well.
I would like to nominate Wendy Eaton.
Thank you. Excellent. So now, Seth, we do have 4 names.
That's correct.
Okay.
And we also have a nomination of Michael Marquardt by Gene Adams.
Thank you, Jean. And we'll wait just a few more seconds to see if we can have one more alternate then.
Oh, we have a message that Wendy isn't a member from Kristen.
Okay. All right. So that leaves us now with 4 names. Is that correct, Seth?
Right. And then Timothy Burt has a message of past president.
He has a message of past president.
Right.
So meaning that he'd like to consider a past president on the nominating committee. Is that what he?
I'm not sure.
Okay. So Timothy, if you'd like to make clarify. Thanks to you all for using the chat. We're very grateful for all your communications this evening. With no further names at, okay. Okay. Right. And I, as immediate past president, will be serving as the chair of the committee. At this time then, having 4 names for the nominations, we will close the nominations. We thank you very, very much for your participation. Now to approve our nominating committee, Seth, would you please repeat all 4 names for us?
Yes. Michael Marquardt, Catherine Pollock, Jason Smith, and Kyle Walker.
Thank you very much. Do we have a motion from the floor to accept the nominating committee nominees? If you will please place that in the chat.
Rachel moves. And Megan Ann Stanton seconds.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that we approve then the 2022 nominating committee as Seth has just read. Any discussion, please place it in the chat at this time. Seeing no discussion, we will proceed on to the vote. If you will please cast your vote by raising your hand.
We have 28 out of 33 hands up.
Thank you very much. The nominating committee has been accepted, and we thank you in advance for your service. Congratulations. At this time, we would like to announce the new appointed treasurer of JWHA for the 2021 through 2024 season. This will be Robert Cook. We congratulate Robert and welcome him. At this time, we would like to turn the time over to Dan Whitmore for a discussion on the proposed membership fee increase. Dan?
Well, thank you, Jill. This is time where rubber hits the road because we're asking the membership to increase the fee, which the board is recommending. The board has not increased the fee since 2017. So we've had about 5 years out there with no increase. Every organization has this tough issue of looking at who's going to finance the organization. We've been reaching out to trying to enlarge the pool of contributors, but it's still our role as members to assist. We currently have 319 members, and we'd like to double that number for our centennial, or our golden anniversary next year, but that's yet to be seen. The board on April 17th, 2021, recommended what you see on the screen for increases, but not to be immediately effective. We don't want people to have to pay increased fees and come to our golden anniversary next year. So this will be effective January 1st, 2023. And the regular membership fee will increase from $45 to $55, which is a $10 increase per year. The spousal membership will increase $10 as well, if approved, from $15 to $25. And the e-membership dues will increase from $25 to $35. And if this motion passes, the board will also recognize that non-member journal prices will increase $5 from $25 to the $30. It is not an easy thing to ask members to dig into the pocket a little bit more, but we're asking you to dig for $10 a year to help cover the cost. There's no magic formula for determining how much members should kick in and how much we should rely on from contributors and otherwise. It really takes all of these stakeholders' responsibility to move forward with it. Last year, we completed and received $16,845. With this proposed fee increase, that will be increased roughly $2,300. And this amount has gone from the Finance Committee to the board. And as I mentioned, last April, the John Whitmer Historical Association board recommends that this goes to the full membership for ratification. And with that, let's see, I propose that. And so I also move approval of these membership fee increases.
Thank you very much, Dan. So Dan has moved then that we do approve the membership dues increase effective January the 1st, 2023. Do we have a second? If you could place that in the chat. Do we have a second?
We do. Megan Ann Stanton has seconded.
Thank you. Dan and Megan have moved and seconded that we approve the membership dues increase effective January the 1st, 2023. Is there any discussion? If you'll place it in the chat.
Myra Elliott asks, student membership stays the same.
Yes, I believe that is correct.
Thank you, Dan. Do we have any other discussion? If not, we will proceed then to the vote. If you will cast your vote then for the 2023 membership dues increase, please raise your hand.
We have 27 out of 33 hands up.
Thank you very much. The membership's dues increase has been approved. Thank you. The 2021 business meeting is now adjourned. Thank you for your participation. We would like to thank the 2021 Virtual Conference Committee for the excellent job they have done in preparing our conference. Kristen Mackay, Chair, Casey Griffiths, David Howlett, Melvin Johnson, Lachlan Mackay, and Nancy Ross. We're indebted to you all. Thank you. Coming up next will be the 2021 awards ceremony. At this point, you will need to log out after we thank our 2021 awards committee, Joe Geisner, Chair, Book Awards, John Dinger, Brent Metcalf, Catherine Pollock, and Susan Staker. Our Article Awards Committee, Bryce Blankenagel, Julianne Briscoe, John Charles Duffy, and Nancy Ross. Thank you for your time and efforts on our behalf. If you will now log out and go to the next link for the award ceremony and panel beginning at 6:45 p.m. Thank you.